Welcome back, everyone. I'm Carrington-Russell, Australian award-winning author of kick-butt heroines and steamy action-packed fantasy worlds. And I have a very special guest for you today. We are talking USA Today best-selling author and multi-award winning. We are talking young adult paranormal and fantasy, who is well loved for books such as Stealing Ambers and Shadow Angels. We are talking to the one and only Julie Hall. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I am so excited to have you on today. I would love to know what got you into writing and how you found publishing your first book.
Oh yeah. That was a lot of years. I don't even like to admit how long that it took me to write that first book. I know first time authors ask me that a lot. Like, how long did it take you? I'm like, way longer than it should have, but like I think that happens a lot. But I started writing in my like late 20s, and I've always been a fan of young adult authors. And or young adult books, excuse me. I remember when I was younger, I was embarrassed to buy from the young adult section. So I used to wait until it was like cleared out. And then I would like scurry in there and get books. And I love that like there's no longer that like anybody buys young adult books. But anyway, I read a ton growing up. And then I kind of had like a few years where I was just busy with work and life, and I was getting married, and I just wasn't reading a ton. And then I came back to it, and I refound my love for it, but I was also a little taken aback by some of the content that was in young adult books, actually. And like when I was younger, which was unfortunately like 1,004 years ago, there was a little bit of this expectation of what would be in young adult books. And then I found that like as an adult, I was reading them, and partially because a lot of adults do. I think that like Twilight really opened up the young adult industry for really anybody to read it, which I do love that. But I remember thinking that there was some content in there that I was like, oh, this is a little more than what I was expecting or what I used to read. And so I really always wanted to write a book. And I'm like, I'm going to try to write something that like I would want to read, like a young adult book that I felt had the things in it that I really loved, that wasn't cheesy, that, was action packed. And it was something that anybody of any age could read. And so my middle schooler could read it, and like my mom could read it, and I would feel good about it. And so that's kind of how I started writing. And then first of all, writing your first book is hard, right? Like you don't really know what you're doing. I took a few creative writing classes in school. I read a lot, and those were like my, credentials for being able to write a book. So I didn't know what I was doing. So it took me forever, but I got really sick actually with Lyme disease. I have chronic Lyme disease, and it caused me to be bedridden for a couple of years. So I started to write this book, and then all of a sudden I found myself like not able to do much of anything, hardly even stay awake. And so this writing journey, that first book, took several years to come together. And then when it finally did, to make a really long story short, with my first book, which was Huntress, When My Life After series, I did have like an agent and a publisher for that one. And publishing that way was just very different than I thought it would be, and didn't work out great. And so after I published that first one with the publisher, I was like, I don't think that this is what I want to do. And so I ended up getting the rights back for the series and then publishing it on my own. And so I've been like indie publishing or self-publishing the rest of my books, which is a really good fit for me. And my husband helps a lot with some of the more technical stuff that I don't want to deal with. He's kind of a computer guy. And so he was like, let's do this, self-publishing thing. And I'm like, great, if we do it, you're doing this work, and then I'll do this work. And so that's kind of a long way to get there. But, that's kind of the beginning of that journey.
Yeah. And what year was that when Huntress published?
The first time or the second time?
Yeah.
I don't know that I could tell you off the top of my head. Let me think. I want to say the first time it was published was 2015, I think. Yeah. And then I republished it. It went off the market, and then I republished it in 2000. Hold on one second. Actually, I can check. I have an awards up here. There we go. And they tell me what year I won them. And so that's what I can tell when I published the book. And so 2018, it republished, and then I started publishing the rest of the series.
It's so interesting. I love discussing this as well when it comes to young adults specifically, because it is one of those genres, especially as you mentioned, when you and I were young teenagers reading these books, there was an expectation as to what you were going to get out of it. And now it's a lot more intense in some and a lot more graphic, and especially I want to say in the romance department, some of the things I'm just like that shouldn't be in a young adult book. That's not okay, because but it is what it is now in the market. But as you said, it is, as an author, wanting to be able to have multiple different age groups being able to read that particular book. And I love that you had that journey of starting off the traditional publisher, it didn't work out, adapting and finding the way that this business would best work for you and your journey. I really want to talk about Stealing Ambers, which is the first book in your Legacy series. So that tagline hooked me immediately. What was it? It was like, monsters are real, there's lies in the world, and I belong to both, or something like that.
Yeah, I'm like, let me check. I have the book in front of me. A realm of monsters, a world of lies. She belongs to both. That's the tagline of that one. Yeah.
Boom. One click, done. Tell me a little bit about that series for those who haven't read it yet, and where you got the inspiration from.
Yeah, that series is about a girl named Emberly. All of my series, the main character is like a upper teenage girl, fits the genre, but a girl named Emberly who finds out that she's this half angel warrior when she's 17 years old, and that she has to battle these, they're called Forsaken. They're kind of like vampire-like creatures, but they are kind of like fallen angels in human bodies here on Earth, and then has to battle fallen angels in this world she calls the Spectrum world. And she finds out that she's not the only one, that there are others out there like her as well. And so yeah, I mean, it's a really fun read. It's got a lot of action in it. It has romance. I do love romance in my book. I just like to keep a line for me, because I would want a middle schooler to be able to read a book, but I do want, myself, someone my age or my mother, to be able to read it and enjoy it as well. And yeah, that's kind of the gist of the series, her figuring out about her powers, making friends and a found family, really, because she grew up an orphan. And that part of the story was actually sparked by my daughter. My daughter she's 10 now, but she's Ethiopian, and we adopted her when she was 2. And so I also wanted to write a series that might be something that she could relate to a little bit when she got older. And so the main character in my book physically looks very different than the other Nephilim, or angel born, I call them, in the series. And so there was a lot of things that I was thinking about her when I was writing, and what might some situations be like for her. But I've always liked the concept of Nephilim, which is like, it's like in scripture, in biblical scripture, there's like 2 lines about what they are. And they're like super ambiguous, and people have debated really what they are. And that's kind of what sparked the interest for writing, the angels versus demons, and having this twist on it there, was just the fact that there's like this, kind of mysterious scripture that no one really can agree what it is. And so I was like, well, what if this is what this is? And I wrote a story on it.
I love the what if question. That always leads to the best imagination in worlds. Out of curiosity, has your daughter read the book yet?
No, she's 10, and so I wouldn't let her read them yet. Perfect. She's a little young, and my daughter is like finally just getting into reading. She was like, she would tell me fiction is so boring. She was really into biographies and histories. She's like, when her teachers would make her read fiction books, she's like, I hate it, which I thought was hilarious, right? Because that's like what I do for a living. And she's just within like the last couple of months, she's gotten into like the Percy Jackson books, and now she loves it and wants to read all the time, which has been really cool to see. And so I think a couple more years, which she'll be more age appropriate for this series. But right now she's kind of in that middle grade reading level.
What are some tips that you might have for fellow writers who are looking at going into the young adult paranormal fantasy writing? Do you have any advice for them?
I think I'd probably just tell them to read in the genre that they like a lot. I mean, I still do a ton of young adult reading. I think it's just good to know what's out there, what people like, what kind of author that you want to be too. I really think it's important that people stay true to themselves and like what they want to write and what excites them. I feel like a lot these days, some people have been, not to like super throw shade on this or anything, but like pumping out books just because they feel like that's what they should be writing in, because that's what people will buy. And you know what? This is also an industry. It's interesting. Authoring books is like both very much a business, but also an art. And so I do understand that whole, like, I'm running my art as my business, and so I want to make money. But I do think that the better books come when people are passionate about it. And so, find what gets you excited, write. I think people should be writing things that they would want to read as well. I think that's the best books come out of that.
But as you said, write what you love and write what's to market. And those are conversations we all have when we have, meetup groups and things like that. And both are completely validated. Once you find what you're passionate about in your lane, I actually find that those authors also find the transition a lot more smoother than sometimes those who are just trying to pump out so many books a year. But hey, if it works for them, even better.
Yeah, I mean, actually, there is some, that is a skill that some people have to be able to just get those books out. I mean, it is impressive. But when you're first starting out, I think that you really need to work on something that's close to your heart. It's hard, writing is not an easy thing. And too, you put that book out there and it's like putting a part of your soul out there that people are either going to accept or reject. It's just a very, it can be brutal. And so I think that if you're starting out and you're at least writing something that you're proud of, like you have that, and that's not something someone can take away from you.
How did you overcome that obstacle? It's a very difficult thing for authors when you put your book out into the world. As you said, we get that feedback, we get that criticism sometimes, and especially on your first books, it's really hard to not take that personally. So what was some of the conversations you were having with yourself to say, it's okay, this book isn't for everyone, I'm still a goddess, let's do this?
It was hard. I think you need to develop a thick skin, because if you're going to only rely on whether or not, people are praising you to be confident about your work, that's a hard place to be. You're just always going to be on this roller coaster. I do think that that's where authors get some burnout too. Besides just like the writing so fast, but also just like feeling like it's taking a bit of them to write in each of their books that, gets taken away when they get a bad review. Gosh, I'm trying to think back to the beginning. It was rough. So I first went to traditional publishing rather than indie publishing because I wanted that validation that someone else thought my work was good. And so, it was I wasn't sure, that I was writing anything that anyone wanted to read or that was worth reading. You've heard of imposter syndrome, I'm sure. It's a big thing that authors have. For those of you who've never heard that out there, it basically means that you feel like you are the one fake in the industry, in the business, and someone's going to figure it out someday that you shouldn't be there. I think that's something that a lot of authors struggle with. And in the beginning, that's the reason why I went for traditional publishing. I was like, I want an agent to feel confident that they can sell this book, and I want a publisher to say that they can get behind it too, and that will make me feel better. In hindsight, like I wish that I hadn't needed that. Like I wish I could have just gone out the gate and been more confident in what I was writing. I think that it took extra years to kind of get things up and running because I felt like I couldn't go forward until I had that kind of professional industry standard stamp on my work. And so it's just taken, the more I write, the more confident I get in the stuff coming out, the more I can be okay with people not liking a book. I mean, it's just like liking a movie show or a movie or a TV show. Some people like it and some people don't. It doesn't mean that it's definitively a great one or definitively an awful one. And so just being confident that there are readers out there that do enjoy my work, and I'm writing for myself and I'm writing for them. And the people who don't like it, there's a ton of books out there. Go read other ones, find somebody else that you really do like. So it's hard.
I'd love to know what your process is like. Obviously, this authoring business is a bit of a beast to manage. So what does your day-to-day look like? Are you a 9-to-5 writer? When do you do your social medias? What does it look like for you?
Oh yeah, I've tried to veer off of what works for me in my body, and it hasn't worked very well. And so I'm not a morning person at all, at all. I hate mornings. I hate waking up. I hate doing stuff in the mornings. Basically before noon, I'm really not. I don't want to talk to anybody. But I can stay up till 1 and 2 in the morning, no problem. And I've just never really been able to switch off of that. So my writing gets done in the afternoon. So I spend the mornings, and the mornings for me are late. I'm not even going to admit how late the mornings are me, but we'll just call them mornings. Okay. The mornings for me usually consist of me doing admin work. because I am self-publishing and independently publishing, there's a lot of stuff that I do that maybe a traditional publisher doesn't do. I work on covers with designers. I do all my marketing and promotions, like, just all this stuff. So half of my work time is absolutely just publishing work time, not writing. And so I tend to do that in the mornings because, I don't need to necessarily be as creative. I just need to answer questions and things like that. Social media gets done usually in the mornings too. And then I write from about like 1 to 5-ish usually. So about 4 hours of writing a day. And then I'll, in the afternoon, evening, I will kind of wrap up whatever admin stuff I want to do. And then if I've had like a really unproductive day or just like goofed off, then I do sometimes end up writing at night. But I found that it's really important to be consistent with your writing. It's very easy to get distracted, right? Just by like the internet, or whatever. And so, or just like being lazy and, or wanting to watch TV or put it off. For me, the most difficult part of writing a book is getting that first draft down. And so, if I don't tell myself that I have to have a word count, I would blow off writing days for sure. And just do all the businessy stuff or editing. I enjoy editing, but I need to I know your face on that one. I am one of the
authors say that.
I enjoy the phase where I know that I have a story and then I get to take time to like work it and make it better and like add to it or take stuff out or whatever. Like that manipulating of the story is fun for me because I know if I put in X number of hours, I can get X number done. With me, my writing is so all over the place. I mean, like I can work for 4 hours and get like 500 words sometimes, which is just painful, right? Like that's like a page worth. I mean, it's like, what have I done for 4 hours? I've stared at the screen, right? Or I could work for 4 hours and get like several thousands done, which obviously I feel better about. And so when I'm in that editing phase, I know that I at least have those like meat and potatoes. I've got the bones, I've got the structure for the story down. And so like, there's a little bit of pressure off. And so it makes me feel better. So I enjoy that.
So are you a plotter or a pantser?
I am a pantser who would like to be a plotter. It's very weird. I'm a pretty structured person in every other area of my life, except for when it comes to writing. I have tried to plot and one of two things happened. I either don't follow the plot at all. So I've spent all this time, right? And then all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, squirrel. And I go off on this and I'm like, oh, this would be better. Or I'm going to throw this in, right? So it's like I've wasted my time on that plot. Or the plot is just bad because I cannot think up all that creative stuff at one time. And so it just ends up looking like this really boring plot, which then I end up going off of because I'm like, I've written this like semi-boring plot. And so, yeah, in a perfect world, I would be a plotter because that's kind of how I live the other aspects of my life. But for some reason in this writing stuff, I guess because you're using a different side of your brain, and you got to be creative. I can't do it.
It's so funny how we have to structure around different things as well. As you said, you just kind of find what works for you and you have to go with it. And I think a lot of people, as you said, a lot of us say, I'm a pantser as well, and we say we want to be a plotter, but you learn along the way that that's just not the path for you, and that's okay as well. I want to talk about actually beautiful things. So I want to talk about covers, merchandise, things like that, because you are a massive advocate for all those lovely things.
Oh, yeah.
So, and as you're saying, hardbacks is currently an obsession right now. I watched your TikTok, you're obsessed, and I love it because look at your bookshelf, it's stunning. So what advice do you have for authors when it comes to those more, I want to call them side projects, like when you have your new covers, when you have merchandise, things like that?
Can we go back for a second? Actually, I do want to answer that question, but I have a question for you really quickly. Where do you find that you come up with your ideas for writing? And like where do you do your thinking? And the reason why I'm asking is because like so much of my plotting happens in my car or my shower. And I'm curious, like if you're like, do you get your ideas when you're actually sitting down and when you should have your ideas, or are you getting them at random times like I am?
So mine is now. So because and it's very interesting because I think you and I write very similarly from what we're and even like our themes. I'm just like, are you and I the same person? But I'm Australian and American, completely different. So mine's actually writing now. So my first couple of years, it was quite sporadic and everywhere and anywhere. When I was going to sleep, when I was working, whatever I was doing, I always carried a notepad on me because when I was working, I would just like scribble down stuff. But now it's when I walk my dog and every morning I will be like, all right, show me what I'm not understanding right now, or show me what we're doing this chapter. And then my mind will just ticker over visual, like a movie, what's happening, conversations that I had. And I'm like, that's why you're doing that. Also, yeah, it's a little bit weird. I'm a little bit psychotic, but that's where I get all my ideas.
Okay, no, that totally makes sense. It's almost like when you're that pressure to not put it down and like ideas flow when you're not, which is why, again, when I'm in the car or the shower, for some reason, the shower, I get a ton of ideas in the shower, right? What are you going to do in both of those places? Sometimes in the car, I like pick up the phone and do like a voice memo, but in the shower, it's like, oh, dude, I just have to like remember this idea. It was really cool. So, all right, we can bounce back to your question about the side projects and things. So, I don't publish like super fast. Usually, I will say like my last series, which was a co-author series with Leia Stone, we put the first one out in January, the second one out in February, and the third one in April. And so that was like lightning speed for me. I mean, my head is still kind of like dizzy from how fast we did that. But traditionally, I'm not putting out books quite that fast. And a lot of other people that are writing in my genre, in especially indie authors, will put out books very quickly. And that writing aspect of what I said, like when I can sit there for 4 hours and write 500 words and it's like miserable, right? Doesn't come as quickly. And so I kind of have to find different ways to market myself, my books, I think, than some other authors. And, because I personally cannot sit at a computer for 8 to 10 hours a day and try to write. It's just, it'll hit a point and just done, it's not coming anymore. And so I have these other hours in the day and I'm like, what else can I be doing to bring something to bring my readers into my world? I joke that like I do it for myself, and I totally do. I'm like, I love seeing my characters come to life with these different artists. I love finding different artists that like people don't know about, and like just seeing what they can come up with. I do love that. But like, really, it's like, what can I do to bring my readers into the world while they're waiting for the next book to come out? What can they visually see? What can they get excited about? What products can I come up with that maybe other people don't have the time to do it because they're writing lightning speeds 8 to 10 hours a day. And I don't work like that. And so that's kind of where my like special editions and the illustrated covers and the pictures within the books and just the chibis and the stickers and the bookmarks and all the things kind of came from, is part of the way that my brain works is I'm thinking about the storyline and stuff, but I'm also thinking about like, what are some other cool things that I can do to offer to the reader that helps them feel like they're really part of these worlds that I've created.
It is very not difficult, but there are a lot of prolific authors out there in our field that are writing so many books and publishing, and credit to them, that's phenomenal. But similarly, you can't produce, and you shouldn't have to compare it away. So I love that you've been creative enough to think, how else can I market this? What is my draw point to bring people into my world? And also, we are such visual people. Like, we love different kinds of things. We love putting on Instagram, TikTok, everything like that. So I definitely will be grabbing some details off you later for those stickers and bookmarks and stuff.
No problem. I get real excited. I get excited to talk about the business side. I mean, my background is I went to business school and then I was a film publicist before I started writing. And so like, I'm this promotions and marketing stuff is kind of all in up my alley. I mean, if I had a choice, I would actually really love to be one of those prolific authors who like write a ton. I just can't. I kind of know I've learned my own limitations in that area, and like no shade at all to those authors. I think that is like an amazing skill that they have to be able to pump out like 5,000-10,000 words a day. But that's not me. And so what is me? And so I kind of feel like in some ways I have to figure out how to forge a way that's a little different than maybe a lot of other authors in my industry are going, because I can't do what they're doing on the level that they're doing it. So what can I do? And this is it. And I wish that I could I'm jealous of those authors who are also artists as well, who can like visualize their own stuff. I've seen a couple, Annette Marie, she like I think she's done comic books for hers as well. I mean, it's really very cool.
I know, I could not believe when I first found out that Annette Marie does her own covers. I was like, come on, you can't have it all. You can't be so talented. But it's phenomenal. But I also think it's amazing having that background that you do. I imagine it's really enabled you to be able to think outside of the box. And I think that's very clever because often there's so much saturation in resources and authors telling us how we should shape our business, what we should do. This is a cookie cutter way. And then I think as soon as you adapt it to what best suits you and your brand, that's when magic happens. Speaking of magic, I do want to talk about your co-writing adventure with Leia Stone because you guys, as you said, did a rapid release from the start of the year and Shadow Angels went boom. So how did you find co-writing for the first time, being a Panther? And what advice would you have for fellow authors who might be looking at writing with somebody else?
Working with Leia was an amazing experience. It was so much fun. And we really clicked. The storyline flowed really easy. It was much more seamless than I thought it would be. I always thought that I would be actually a really bad co-writer. And so whenever anybody brings it up, because it's like, it comes up in conversations with other people, you know, you get to know different authors who are in your genre and you share ideas. And I actually love that about the author community. I've like made a lot of friends and just, you know, like generally speaking, I feel like we want each other to do well, which is great. But whenever it's come up, I'm like automatically go, no, I would be a horrible co-author. And it's because I'm my word count. Specifically, I'm like worried about my word count. And then also it becomes that imposter syndrome where you're like, what if I don't write as well as you do? And then you like get mad at me while we're writing, like all those insecurities and fears came up. So I was always like, no, you know, I'd be a horrible co-writer. No one would want to co-write with me. Like almost like, you know, cutting it off before it's even in somebody's thought process that maybe we could write a book together. And Leia and I have known each other for several years. You know, we were more of like acquaintance than really good friends. And we actually went on a writing retreat together last spring, I think it was, and got to hang out for a couple of days together and just found out that our writing was like our styles were very similar. The way we write is very similar. And so she approached me and was like, do you want to co-write? And I said no first. I was like, I didn't say no. I said I was really worried that like it wouldn't work out. And I was like, I'm more concerned with our friendship than this. And I don't want to do something that would like ruin our friendship or whatever. And so we started that project, Shadow Angel, as like a trial to see how it went. Cause I was like, if this ends up being really like not a great process for you or for me, I don't want to put anybody through something miserable. So we just kind of like, we're like, well, let's give it a couple of weeks and see how it goes. And then, you know, it just ended up working out really well. And, you know, 3 books later and we had a great time. And it's really cool because it's almost like having a coworker when you've been working alone for so long. And so, you know, we got to talk every day and we talk about the story and we got to know each other better. And she's, you know, she's a great friend now. And so, you know, I think that not to go on too many tangents, but this is a co-authoring tangent. I think that it has to be the right mix with co-authors. I've heard some stories where things did not work out well and it sounded bad. And I think that it's not necessarily one particular person who's always at fault. I think that just sometimes 2 authors and 2 people don't mesh super well. And then sometimes they do and it works well. And I'm happy to report and we'll, you know, say that Leia and I think worked really well together. We really had a great time.
And to follow that as well, it is a bit, I always consider co-writing like a marriage, and you really need to make sure that you're getting the most compatible person. And your writing styles kind of have to be very similar at the same time, because you'll probably find that your thought process is very similar. I've had I have heard horror stories as well, but I remember a pair of co-authors, really, really, really good friends, but they said that they really got to a standstill where they disagreed on something. And so they said they were in a debate about that situation for months. And so I know some authors also write contracts prior to actually going into this, because they're like, we want our friendship to be saved in a situation. So sounds very similar to what you've experienced as well.
Contracts are probably a good idea just because it kind of lays the expectations of the foundation out. Even if it's a really, like one pager or something like that, it kind of just gets it out of the way. And then it's like, all right, this is the expectation. This is what it's going to be. And then we don't have to really think about that. That's just how it is because we've agreed on it at the beginning. So I think contracts and stuff are a good idea when you're co-authoring. When you are authoring, you're usually in charge of your entire world all on your own. And then all of a sudden when you're co-authoring, you have somebody else that you have to answer to, or somebody else who has a say. And so I think that it can be a little bit of a stretching or difficult thing for any author to like hand the story over. That was a little bit of an odd thing with Leia. It was like I couldn't just say, oh, I think we should go this direction, and we did. There were some times where we did disagree, but I do think if you're going into co-authoring, anybody who's listening who's going into co-authoring, just don't think of it quite as much as your book baby as it normally is. Like, yes, you're creating this world, but like hold it with loose hands so that it can go in different directions, and don't be like heartbroken if it doesn't do exactly what you want it to do. You can write your own story later and have it do whatever you want it to do. The beauty of co-writing is that you've got two brains coming up with ideas. But if you're like so strict on how you want a story to go, that is a bad recipe for working with somebody else on a story.
Can we expect more books from you and Leia in the future, or we're not sure yet? Or
I don't know. I definitely wouldn't say no. I mean, we have like very loosely like joked about what the next series that we do together or something, but we don't have anything set right now. But I'd be open to it, and I think that she would be open to it too. I just think we're both right now trying to focus on a couple of our individual projects. But I think it's safe to speak for Leia and say that like, someday I think it would be fun to do something else together again.
Amazing. Now, you are a USA Today bestselling author, which is amazing. So congratulations. And you have won like a lot of awards. I was stalking you on your website and I was like, hot dang, who is this woman? I would love to know the moment that you found out you're on the list for the USA Today and how you celebrated. But if that was for you what felt like the most biggest accomplishment recognition, or whether it was one of the other awards.
Oh, that's a great question. You know what? I don't actually remember yes, I don't remember what we did. I don't remember, like I can remember the first couple of releases I had, like going to celebrate with my husband and my daughter, going out to dinner. I remember those days being awful. At least the releases being awful, because it was just like I was so nervous. I didn't know how it was going to go. I put so much work into this, and you do want your book to do well right out the gate. So that first day is actually very important. And I remember those first few releases were just awful. Like I didn't eat at all those days. I was like a wreck. It's gotten a little easier. I'm not quite as emotionally entangled as I was, but like I can't really remember. I think I was just so busy at that time in my life that it was like something that I'm working towards. But then once I'm completed with done doing the work that I need to do, it's almost like I shut it off and went to the next thing. And the same thing with a lot of those awards. It's like you put in for those awards, but you don't hear for months and months and months. And so it's like, and then, there's like you lose some too. So you try or not think of that as well. And so there have been a couple of big ones that it's like by the time that I found out that I've won, I'm like almost onto the next thing. I'm working on the next project, or it's been like, it's enough in the rearview mirror that I'm kind of competing with myself to kind of just keep doing better and better and better. And so it's like, oh, that's awesome. But like, boop, like what comes next? A couple of those too were like during COVID, the awards, some of the bigger ones were during COVID. And it was like, if it had been not a COVID year, it would have been like an award ceremony I could have gone to, and I would have given a speech, but I didn't, because it wasn't during, it was during COVID and they weren't doing that anymore. And so it felt like less of an accomplishment as it would have had I been able to like accept the award in person or whatever. But I don't have like an awesome story for that. I'm sorry.
So what I'm hearing is you need to celebrate more.
yeah, I do.
One thing I really want to talk to you about is taglines and blurbs. As I said, your taglines hook me straight away. All of your books, I was going through them and I was just like, yes, thank you. And it's a difficult beast for a lot of authors to handle, being able to get those punchy words, being able to summarize it so short. So what advice do you have for writers when it comes to taglines and blurbs?
Yeah, taglines and blurbs. I don't know that I've met a single author who's like, I love writing those. Oh, they're awesome. They're my jam. I'm sure there are those authors out there, but for the most part, you bring up taglines or blurbs and you get a big groan from authors like, oh, I hate them. It's so difficult because you're given, you as like novelists, we're used to writing long, lengthy plot lines and stuff, not like, punchy little whatever. So it's a completely different skill that you have to develop, that goes against what we're used to doing. And there's so much pressure, right? On that. There's so much pressure on these, like one little sentence or like a couple of groupings of little sentence. People look at your cover, your tagline, and your blurb, and they're going to decide whether or not to buy your book. And that is that's a lot of pressure. It's scary to think that you could get it wrong and you would lose readers for a great book just because your cover wasn't the best or didn't stand out, or the same thing about your blurb and your tagline. I think that I've realized, I'm assuming that most authors understand how important they are, but I really do think about I've got to get something that is shorter, because in the beginning, what I wanted to do was write the entire plot out, right? I have an entire back of a book. I can just put the whole, I can write almost of the plot in there. That's not what you're supposed to do. And it took me a hot minute to get there. They do take me a long time to write too. So for anyone out there, I'm not like sitting down and just like, 20 minutes later, got it. I mean, it usually takes me days, like a day, I get something, I overwrite. So I will overwrite. I will write everything that I think needs to go in. I'll put it down. I'll come back the next day, shorten it up. Usually I'll contact a couple of my author friends, ask them for their opinions on it. They'll help me, with what words needs to be there, what doesn't. And at the end of the day, I always feel like I'm not telling enough of the story, but I think that's where you need to be. I think you need to realize as authors that we need to hook readers, not explain the entire story to readers. We need to give them a sample taste, not give them a whole piece of pie to be like, this is, you're gonna like the pie, here's a slice. No, it's like, you're gonna like the pie, here's a forkful of what's in there. And so that's at least with blurbs. Taglines, I hate taglines. I think I hate taglines worse than blurbs, to be honest. I will start thinking of taglines when I first start writing a book. And so I have a giant whiteboard down in my husband's office, really. And he gave me a little bitty corner of it. I have this huge whiteboard, and I'll start writing keywords down, or concepts, or, I'll think of a little phrase that sounds good, and I'll put that down. And then, it just takes me a really long time to develop a good tagline. And if I don't do that, what happens is I get to the end of the book and I don't have a tagline, and then I freak out because I've not thought about it long enough. It doesn't just come. So anyway, that's kind of how my process works in there, I guess.
What would you say your top 3 marketing tips are? What have you found that really works for you in regards to sales and branding?
Get good covers. I really think that that's important. For me, I will say this, I think goes against what some people will tell you. And so you can take it or leave it. I try to get covers that do stand out a little bit more. I think that the general consensus is to get a cover that looks like what everybody else is doing, so that when you look at it, you automatically know what genre it's in, which is not bad. That is absolutely a way to go. But again, coming back to the fact that I don't write as quickly, so I'm not getting out books as fast. I try to have my books be on target genre, but also look a little bit different so that they stand out a little bit more, so they're not lost in that sea. I think it's a really fine line because you don't want to get something that's so weird that people aren't going to recognize that it's a young adult urban fantasy. But I also don't want something that looks just like somebody else's book, and then when they're thinking of it in their mind, they can't think of what book's mine. So anyway, covers are really important. People do judge books by their cover. They absolutely do. And so I think investing in a good cover, finding a good cover designer, it's kind of, authors will talk about it all the time. Indie authors, I'm sure traditionally published authors talk about it as well, but they're publishing companies doing that. So the pressure isn't on them for that marketing. Find a social media outlet that you are comfortable on and try to build a following on that. I think it can be really overwhelming with how many social media outlets are out there. And I think that I don't know. I think that like people might think that they need to be everywhere. I think being everywhere is probably good, but I also think that we're just people. We're just humans. There's only so many hours in a day. And so at least picking one that you're comfortable with, that you enjoy, that you can grow, where your readers can find you and interact with you is really important. And so don't stress out if like you can't be on all of them, you know. I'm not a huge fan of TikTok. I will say that one is a new one for me that I've kind of branched out. I think you said that you saw some of my stuff on there. I just don't have the time or the desire. You will never find me dancing in front of a camera to sell a book. Like there's a line and that's where I draw it. But you know what? There are other authors out there who find that so much fun, and that's where they should be. And that's what they should be doing, you know, but I've been like, okay, that's just not who I am as a person or an author. That's not going to be, you know, my primary. And then also I think that, with as far as marketing and promotions, I'm kind of clumping marketing and promotions in here together, but I think as far as marketing and promotions going, finding other authors that write similarly and cross promoting is really important. I do a lot of cross promotion with other authors who write similar things. What I would caution in that is to make sure that you find authors who are in fact writing similar stuff that isn't so off. So I realize that as, you know, writing YA urban fantasy, there are some just straight up fantasy or paranormal romance authors that I definitely have crossover with them, but it hits a spot where if people are looking for really spicy paranormal romance, they're going to be disappointed if they read my stuff. And so if I start doing cross promotion with that author, either my readers are going to be upset that they all of a sudden pick up this other author's book and they're like, whoa, this is too much. And then on that same token, those readers are going to pick up my book and be like, where's all the spice that I'm used to? And so, but sharing readers between authors, I think is a great thing. I'm always happy to do that. I love some authors really helped me out when I was a baby, small author. I was really fortunate to have some people who were just super nice, and I had like no followers, but they were like, come into my group, meet some people, gain some readers. And so I'm happy to do that in return now. And I just think that that's a great way to find other readers. These readers devour books. So it's not like I think if they're reading mine, they can't read anybody else's. It's just not the case. I can't come up with enough material to keep my readers satisfied. So I'd love to point them to a friend of mine who's writing something similar. So anyway, good book cover. Make sure you do that. Get on a social media, try growing those accounts. I know people don't like to do it. I get it. Authors are mostly introverts, so it's a little painful. And then also, you know, cross promote with other authors who are writing similar stuff you are.
I want to quickly talk about book trailers, because something that really caught my eye on your website was your book trailers. They're phenomenally beautiful, short and sweet, and I love them. So what made you gravitate to wanting that? And also, who did them? I want to know.
Yeah, so I think I said earlier that like my husband does some stuff. That's one of the things that he does.
He made that.
Yeah, my husband made them. He's a little like, you know, he's kind of techie. He works for like he's not like an IT guy, but he does work for like a website company that, you know, does something really incredibly boring that I have a difficult time explaining. But anyway, he's like up on that stuff. And so that was actually 100% my husband. He was like, he saw them somewhere and was like, I can do that. This would be really fun. And so he figured out how to do it. And he even voiceovered one of them, which is really weird for me, because when I hear it, I'm like, that's my husband talking as my main character, right? Or like some of my readers would be like, ooh, whoever you had voicing over that's dreamy, that's sexy. And I was like, stop. That's my husband. So but yeah, Lucas, my husband Lucas, you know, that was kind of his baby. He's really good at them. It's kind of the way that he gets to be creative is helping me with some stuff like that. That's just beyond me. But you know what, those trailers, you can hire people on Fiverr, I hear, to kind of put those together for you. If you want trailers. I've heard of a lot of other authors who had really good success finding some good people. I don't have any suggestions because Lucas does it for me, and so I don't think twice about it, but that's what I've heard.
This is my favorite question to ask. What is the goal? What is the dream that you're chasing for your career?
Oh, I mean, every author wants to see their books made into a TV show or a movie, right? Like that's kind of like, and it's so funny too, because readers will say, oh, this should be a movie. And you're like, yeah, it totally should. But like that happening is so much more complicated, I think, than people understand. I mean, there's all these steps, you know, that need to happen. I mean, writing a book is actually much easier than getting something produced into television or film. But yeah, I mean, that would be super amazing someday to see actors acting out, you know, one of my worlds or some of my characters. But I think more realistically, you know, a dream or a goal is just to keep being able to do this, you know, for the long run. You know, having each series be more successful than one before it, you know, it would be amazing. And kind of that's what I'm kind of shooting for. I'm not trying to compete with anyone else, but I am trying to keep an eye on what I was doing, making sure I'm still growing as an author, as a writer in my craft, as well as in the business as well. And so I want each of my series to feel like this book was better than the last book I wrote, you know, and then go on. And so that's kind of more of like a realistic goal and dream for me. But the pie in the sky one is like, oh yeah, if someone, you know, from Hollywood is hearing this and wants to pick up any of them, let me know. The options are available. Yeah.
Now, I do have a segment called Speed Dating with an Author. So I've lit a candle, I've created ambience, but basically what it is 5 rapid questions. Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes.
All right. What is the clumsiest moment you've ever had?
In high school, I tried to jump into a friend's van. Like we were all getting in their van and I thought it would be hilarious to jump into it. And I actually nailed the top of the van on my forehead and fell out of it. So rather than jumping in, I just like hit the van and then like fell on the ground. And like, it was one of those moments where you like wish that someone had been recording it because it was probably hilarious. But at the time, you know, there were like 8 friends around and they all saw me. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be super cool. I'm going to jump in this van. And no, I like just nailed my head. And yeah, that was one that stuck out to me.
Just landed back on the ground.
Yeah, and I like lay there for a minute, and I think I got a bruise like right across here too. Like it was a decent knock. There was no concussion, but it was like, yep, that happened. People saw it. Like, okay.
I love that one. What 3 words that would best describe you?
Oh, golly. Okay, this one's funny because I'm so used to describing my characters. I don't think about myself as much as I think I do my characters. Loyal, driven, and funny.
What is your life motto?
Seemed like a good idea at the time. I say that all the time. So many times I'm like, well, that seemed like a good idea at the time. Perhaps in hindsight it wasn't. But yes, that's my life motto.
Authors, all experiences we somehow funnel into our books. So I love that motto. What is the song that best describes you?
Oh my God, any song that I'm thinking of right now is like awful. I'm like Toxic by Britney Spears. No, that's not a good one. Like this is like, I'm like Sweet But a Psycho by Ava Max. No, that's not good either. Demons by Imagine Dragons. No, we're not going to go with that one either. These songs like make me sound like really unhinged and very like a man eater or something. Whatever It Takes by Imagine Dragons. Imagine Dragons is one of my favorite bands, and I really like that song. It's about, you know, doing whatever it takes to get where you need to get.
And the last one is, what is a unique talent or skill set that you have that not a lot of people know about?
Oh gosh, nothing. No, I'm sure that's not right, but like, I have no idea. I mean, like besides like the ability to sleep incredibly long times, like that, I don't know. That's probably not a skill or a talent, but like, yeah, I can do like 14-hour sleeping binges, which is I think impressive for an adult, right? So there we go.
I'm jealous. I have had so much fun. Thank you so much for coming on. And what do we have to be on the lookout for, and where do we find you?
Oh, great question. You can find me on my website is www.juliehallauthor.com, just spelled regular, JULIEHALL, like a corridor, like a hallway, author.com. You can not Google me, but you can type in Julie Hall on Amazon and I'll pop up as well. And then next, I have been working on another book actually in my Phone Legacy series. And so it's featuring different characters from the series, but that's kind of what I've been working on since Leia and I wrapped the last Shadow Angel book. I'm hoping that comes out in the fall, and then I'll be starting a whole new series that is TBD, and I'm not ready to talk about because I might change my mind. So
super top secret. I love it. Yeah, well, thank you so much for hopping on today. And who knows, maybe we'll get you on next year and see where you're at.
Oh, that would be great. No, this has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, have a good day, Julie, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys.